Welcome to Stock Markets with KR Monthly Analysis with Anosh Modi in collaboration with the Financial Pandora. I hope you're having a great weekend. And today we're going to look at some charts, broad market, specific stocks, and looking at some interesting stock picks. So, without any further ado, Anosh, how about we get started?
Hey Krunal, hey everyone watching. Love to be here. Let's start with looking at the Nifty. This is the Nifty weekly chart, and we can see it's been in a sideways consolidation for quite a bit. Uh, we, Again, the two standard deviation regression channel has held, and these lows keep getting rejected every time. Also, what has been acting as good support is the 1.618 fib extension that has really acted as good support, and Nifty has bounced from there. So, all in all, we'd say Nifty has been range bound between 15,600 and 15,900. And any major action on either side we can expect only if we significantly close outside of this range. Here's a closer look at that range, and we can see how tight the movement has been in the frontline index of Indian stock market. Coming to Bank Nifty, we see also similar sideways movement, although of course much choppier than the Nifty. 34,000, which is a key risk management level for us, is being held so far. So we're not immediately worried or immediately bearish. We're still sideways on Bank Nifty too. Here is the Bank Nifty to Nifty ratio chart or relative strength chart, as we like to call it. This is forming a head and shoulders pattern, as we can see. It is not completed yet, but looks like that completion will not take a while. Whether this is a completion pattern or a breakdown pattern will be told by time. This is a chart ratio which we're watching very closely for further cues on out or underperformance by Bank Nifty. Here is the India VIX, which is our volatility measure. As you can see, it's resting near all-time historical lows and testing that -1 standard deviation on the long-term regression channel. Here is the relative strength chart of all the broad market indices to the Nifty. As we can see, it's looking up. There is no tiring of the trend, and things seem to be fairly bullish in this space. Here's an interesting observation for everyone. This is the Nifty PSU Bank versus the Nifty Private Bank Index. As you can see, there seems to be some sort of trend change, and we're breaking out of an inverted head and shoulders pattern. Whether or not this is sustained and whether this leads higher from here on out is something we'll have to wait and see. But this does look very tempting, and PSU banks look like they're well positioned. Handing it over to KR to talk about Reliance and other index heavyweights.
Thanks for that, Anush. Now, jumping to top stocks. Now, the one thing that we can relate. So, we've discussed how small caps, mid caps are actually outperforming the broad market Nifty. Now, one of the reasons for that is because the Nifty stocks, the heavyweight Nifty stocks, are actually not moving that much. We can see here Reliance for the past 1 year. Okay, this is a monthly chart for Reliance. We can see for the past 1 year, it has just moved in a 22% range, which is quite narrow, I would say, by Reliance standards, considering that it's moved quite a lot before that. So possibly waiting for some news-based trigger. We spoke about that earlier also in the previous video, but that could be one of the reasons. Now, shifting to the next chart, which is HDFC Bank, we can see monthly chart where it's still showing us something very interesting. We're seeing a consolidation almost since before 21 actually started. So again, we're seeing some consolidation happening. It's between 1380 and it is the resistance being 1529 or so on a closing basis. We can see it's actually attempted higher levels, but it's failed to close above those levels. So let's see if that actually happens. RSI is below 60, just broke 60 this month. So let's see if August is any better. Next stock we come to is Infosys. Infosys, we can see monthly chart. It's actually done pretty well for itself. Now, Infosys, the previous few videos I actually used to say, I think last month or so, that hey, if you see a spinning top, chances are there is a possibility Infosys might just come down a little before going back up. Now, in the past, we can see it's actually made a few spinning tops here, but literally all of them, it's been able to clear, and now it's closing off 1600 at a time where TCS and a few other stocks are actually not even able to sustain their highs, let alone make new highs. That's very interesting. The next stock is HDFC, and what we can see here, yet again, resistance from 2600, 2620 with support at that sort of zone which we are seeing around 2380. So let's see, as long as 2380 is held on a closing basis, it might just indicate that bullishness is still left. We can see this is actually right around the pre-COVID zone. So it's quite important, I'd say. Next stock is ICICI Bank. ICICI Bank is one of those stocks, just like Infosys, that's managed to create a new high, even though the rest of the few major stocks are not really doing that well. For instance, we can see 682 being sustained for ICICI Bank, which is pretty good. It's actually retesting the previous ATH, which is very interesting. So if the previous ATH is held, I think that's around 679, then we could see further bullishness happening. So this is also a very good thing to see with ICICI Bank. The only thing is volumes are a little low if we look at historical volumes, but I think that's okay, not too bad. Let's see how it goes. Next stock is Kotak Bank. Kotak Bank, we can see that the previous pre-COVID highs have actually been rejected by this past month, and most of this actually happened in the last week or so because it's come down quite a lot. Let's see what happens. It's approaching RSI 50, which is basically the test of bullish bias from what we have discussed earlier. So let's see if it's able to sustain that and if it's able to jump back above 1700 levels. Next stock is SBI. SBI, yet another stock that's been able to do fairly well, even though some other banks that we'll talk about, especially Kotak Bank that we just did, wasn't doing quite well. One of the reasons is that PSU banks in general, as we saw, are relatively better placed compared to private banks. But let's see how that goes. SBI, so far, if it's able to close above 435, then it might just see some further momentum happening. But as of now, let's see what happens. The previous 2 months, we're seeing some price rejection happening over 430-ish. So anything above 420, I think, is good. Anything above 435 will be great. Let's see how that goes. Next stock is Axis Bank. Axis Bank, it's fallen quite a lot. We can see it's actually below the pre-COVID highs, which is really not a good sign. In fact, it's actually taking resistance from early 2020-ish levels, late 2019 levels. So let's see how Axis Bank is actually able to perform. We previously spoke about Axis as one of the range breakout candidates, but it's now actually gone much below that range also. So let's see if 700 psych levels are held. Now coming to a good few stocks, starting things off with DLF. We actually spoke about DLF, I believe, in our very first video of Market Chronicles. And what we are seeing here at that time, it was around 292. What we're seeing here is at 337. 340 is actually a fib extension level. You'll find that if you go on my Twitter, Markets with KR, you can also check out Anosh's Twitter, which is at Anosh Modi, Modyy is his surname, so you can check that out. And yeah, DLF looks pretty good. Realty sector as a whole is pretty decent, so it definitely has potential to go upwards. Next stock that we're looking at is Tata Motors. Now, Tata Motors actually done a dedicated video on this right after the chip shortage issue happened. And we can see in that video, I basically spoke about 282 being an important support zone. We can see it's actually bouncing up right from around 280-ish levels, which is a great sign. So even though the intraday price action on Friday wasn't really very reassuring, I think it still has some good promise, still shows some good promise as long as 280-ish levels are held. Next stock is Granules. Granules, we can see it's actually managed to break out above that little, range or peak that it had created earlier in around April or March or so, and now it's actually taking a support. So it broke it. That resistance was broken. That resistance was then acting as a support. So it's currently bouncing up from that level. Let's see if it's held. I think it also has some decent potential. Now Anosh will take over for the rest of the few stocks that we have.
Thanks, KR. So here we have Punjab National Bank (PNB), which is taking support from a very important level. It seems to be bouncing, and this seems like a good reward to risk entry point. Even if we reach back up to say 43, 45, and with a stop loss right here, somewhere below these lows, we should be fairly good on the RR front. Then we have LTI. This I like to call a textbook case of price volume action. A very clean uptrend followed by some very good consolidation and now breaking out of this range. I think anyone looking to learn technical analysis should also definitely look at this chart. It does not get cleaner than this. This is very tradable and fantastic in general. So, yep, super bullish on LTI as long as this 4300 level is held. And lastly, looking at Godrej Properties, which is broken out to a fresh all-time high on the weekly chart. Looks like there is immense strength, and like you said, the real estate space itself looks pretty warm right now, and we might see some good momentum build up in these names we've discussed.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Anosh. I hope the viewers appreciate the new format. We've tried to talk about a few more stocks because I think it was time to freshen things up. So I hope you found value from this. If you did, make sure you check us out on our social media platforms. We're there on Twitter, LinkedIn, and such. And obviously, you can subscribe to this channel if you liked it, like the video. If you really liked it, comment, do all of that. So with that, I hope you have a great Sunday. And that's it for this one. See you in the next. Happy trading.
See you guys. Happy trading.